Today we start on the Diff. The old Fairlane Diff isn't up to the task, so we're upgrading it.
It's time to do the Diff now. This is a Borg-Warner BTR engineering Diff out of a later model Falcon, around about 1998 or something like that. It's a limited slip centre, 28 spline axles. They're pretty strong diffs, and it was like $150 from a wrecking yard. This particular one's a 3:45 ratio, which is a bit different to the standard 3:23. Better for the 4-speed auto. We don't want it to be too lazy. So it's pretty well suited to the job. Problem is it's out of a sedan, so it's got like a multi-link suspension setup on it. So we've got to chop all that off so we can weld some spring saddles on it. You can get wagon and ute versions of them that just have spring saddles on them, but they're really rare, and for them to have a limited slip is virtually impossible. So it's easier to just get this Diff and chop it up. So we're going to get the plasma cutter into it and just chop all these brackets off and then smooth them off with a grinder. We'll pull the other Diff out after I check the height of the pinion from the floor of the car. So it gives you sort of a guide to where you want your pinion height to be on the new Diff. Then we'll pull it out, throw this one on top of the leaves, clamp it down with the new saddles, get the pinion height right and the location right so it's even on both sides, then weld it. And that's pretty much all there is to it. It's not too difficult a job at all. So we'll get into it.
Using a plasma cutter, Alva removes all the unnecessary full-link suspension brackets that suit the later model Falcon. It's then onto the grinder to remove the remaining material.
That's a good job you're doing there, apprentice. He found the peg. Oh.
With the help of Al's mate Wayne, the old Diff is out in no time at all.
Great job.
Al and Wayne then lift the new diff up onto the leaf springs, and Al checks the location of the diff using a straight edge on the axle flange and measuring into the inner guard using the same reference point on both sides.
We got the diff in there, positioned, the right clearance on either side and the pinion height set. Weld the brackets on. We're just waiting on some U-bolts because the other ones were old and rusty and the threads were all galled up. So we should have them tomorrow. We got the discs machined because it's been sitting out in the weather for a bit, so it was a bit rusty, so we just machined them. Woody's going to throw them back on, and we've then got to make a couple little brackets to hold the brake lines and also the handbrake cable guides, because we did have to cut a couple of those off to allow the saddle to fit. So we'll just weld them on in a slightly different spot. And then we're going to measure up for a tail shaft, get the tail shaft done, and should be nearly good to go then.
The U-bolts we are using are a universal type and are a bit longer than required, so the excessive thread gets some love from the grinder to shorten them.
So I've just removed this bottom caliper bolt just so we can flick the caliper up. So we can get a position for the brake line on the diff here. So we don't want to go mounting the brake line somewhere over here and then not being able to flip the caliper up to do a brake pad change in the future. Bearing in mind there's also the bump stop up the top there and the U-bolts there too, so probably somewhere in the vicinity of around abouts there where the caliper will be able to flip back down.
So with these guides, we had to cut them off just because they were basically right up against the spring seat, so we just got to weld them back on again. They're just like a pre-tensioner with this spring, just to keep the cable all tense in the guides. You can do without them. I have left them off before, but in this case we can't fit them, so we will. So just need to be welded back on there, just a run there. It's not super important, but best to put it back on. Working on the handbrake cable now. We've got the diff all hooked up and the brakes and everything there. So we're connecting to the original handbrake cable set up the newer Falcon diff's got. So we need to adapt that to the original car's handbrake setup. It did have dual cables with a sort of a balance in the middle. This handbrake system doesn't have that. It's just got a single cable with a different setup there that just equalises it at the diff. So all we're going to do is hook it to the original handbrake. Now this handbrake's a pull type, so it just basically pulls out of the dash like that. So there's no leverage ratio in the actual lever itself. So they have to have a lever under the car, which is what I'm making at the moment, basically to give you some mechanical force over the handbrake cable itself. So I've basically just copied the leverage point that the original cable had. It was welded to here, sort of hung out there, and the cable came through the middle of that cross member there. Obviously that's not really suitable anymore because we don't have a centre point. We've just got a single cable running up the side. So I'm just making a lever here. I've just welded a clevis pin to the bolt that holds the cross member onto the subframe for this to lever off. So it's a pretty sloppy sort of system. That's just how they are. There's not much to them. It's pretty simple, and we've got to keep it that way. So this is the original cable that comes from the lever under the dash. So we went to Bunnings, and Rodriguez and I, we got a snag on the way in because that's how you do it. And we picked up these swage fittings for balustrating cable and some cable. Big roll of it. We only need like a metre of it, but that's all right. We'll use it later. So we've got a few different fittings. They've got sort of screw adjusters on them. That's actually for running cabling along your veranda or whatever. But we're going to use that as to give us a bit of adjustment. And we've also got an end piece here that we've used to connect to this original connector that was off the Falcon, the late model Falcon. So then it's just going to run through, connect to here. I'm going to use these clutch clevis bracket things. They go on like that. Your pin goes through there. I'll just weld that to this. We'll have adjustment there to get more cable through. Same on the other side. That will get split in half. We'll have the same thing here. We'll have adjustment for cable slack, but we'll also be able to just put multiple holes in here to change the way the handbrake feels if it travels too far, because this setup's obviously a bit different, so it may need less travel or more travel. So we'll be able to get a lot of adjustment out of it to doing it that way. And also with cable stretch later on, we'll be able to adjust it then as well. So simple stuff, just copy the way the factory did it back in the day. Should work fine. I think what I need you to do is go and get in the car, pull the handbrake out, full length.
Yeah.
So we can figure out the travel.
Your ass up there.
Where's that?
That's probably maximum what you want, I think.
That's lucky because that's exactly all of it.
Yeah? Again?
How far out is it?
Like probably 5 inches or something.
Yeah, that's all there is. That's it actually touching.
Get out.
That's all right.
Get out. Schnell.
Danger, bro. I'm on a ladder.
Lol.
What's so grey with you?
That's working?
Yeah.
Next time on the Skid Factory, we mount up the transmission oil cooler and get the standard column shifter to work.